So is power the key feature there? Is that the kind of level on which those relationships are always being analyzed?
Absolutely, right?
Yeah.
It's a debate about power, not only in terms of limiting it, but imagining the ways in which it's distributed. People would say, okay, yeah, it's a hierarchy. The husband is the head, right? And the wife is under that head. However, that is not servility. That is what we would call separate spheres, for example, right? That the wife has separate duties. Like there's another great document from the period by a guy named Googe called Of Domestical Duties. And when he said, the first time I dictated in the pulpit the duties of wives, the wives freaked out and they accused me of being a misogynist. And so now that I have published this, put it in printed form, I put an asterisk next to anywhere I've put the duties of wives so readers can recur to the duties of husbands.
Okay. That's interesting because that's like an example of building into the text itself an argument about kind of reciprocality in that relationship.
My students, I just taught this, and they sort of, we were talking about the balance or the imbalance of power, and they actually counted. They counted how many duties of wives there were, in balance to how many duties of husbands there were, and thinking they found that they were even.
Okay.
And they also found within the text that all the sermonizers would say, okay, now we finished with the duties of wives. Everybody needs to listen now to the duties of husbands.
But so there's a sense across the spectrum that husbands and wives do have these reciprocal obligations or duties, but different writers see them as having different duties.
Right. It's not a question of obedience, it's a question of how far. Nobody's debating that wives should obey. It's a question of how far. So in Shakespeare's Othello, Emilia, who is Iago's wife, and Iago is the worst husband ever, Emilia says about him at the climax of the play, she says, "'Tis proper I obey him, but not now, not anymore." And so she states a limit to her wifely obedience.
Yeah.
Right? Desdemona, on the other hand, never puts a limit on her wifely obedience to Othello, and she dies. And so in that play, it's a debate. I would say more broadly, like that's because everybody was really aware of what the stakes of that debate were.